Hello and welcome back to another evening of stories and shared company. Tonight, we're doing something a little ambitious. We're going through the entire Walking Dead series from start to finish. All 11 seasons, every major character, every community, every heartbreak, and every quiet moment in between. From the very first episode, all the way through to the final scene. So this one's going to take a while. Get yourself settled in, maybe pull the blankets up a little higher, find that perfect position, and just let the story wash over you. We've got a long road ahead of us tonight, but it's a good one. And honestly, I think retelling this show from beginning to end is one of the most satisfying things you can do. Because when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, you start to see patterns and character arcs and moments of beauty that you might have missed when you were watching it week to week over the course of 12 years. For anyone who needs a little refresher, or maybe hasn't seen the show at all and just wants to know the story, The Walking Dead is a post-apocalyptic horror drama that premiered on AMC on October 31st, 26. Halloween night, which is a pretty perfect launch date for a zombie show if you think about it. It's based on the comic book series by Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore, though the show took its own path in a lot of really significant ways as it went on. Over the course of its run, it aired 177 episodes across 11 seasons and became one of the most watched cable television shows in history. At its absolute peak, somewhere around season 5, individual episodes were pulling in over 17 million viewers, which for a cable drama about zombies is genuinely insane. We'll be going through the show's major eras tonight, the places the survivors called home for a while, the people they met along the way, the villains who tested them, and the quiet human moments that made all the horror worth sitting through. There's a lot of ground to cover, so we'll take our time with each part. If you enjoy what I do here and want to support the channel, consider subscribing. But that's the last I'll mention it. Tonight is just about the story. So let's begin at the very beginning. A hospital room, a man waking up alone, and a world that's already ended without him. Before we get into the events of the show itself, I think it's worth talking for a moment about the world that existed before Rick Grimes opened his eyes. The Walking Dead never gives us a full detailed account of how the outbreak started. That's actually one of the things I've always appreciated about it. We never get a scene in a lab where a vial breaks, or a news montage showing the collapse in real time. What we get instead is the aftermath, the silence, the emptiness. And that's almost scarier because your imagination fills in the gaps. What we do know is that a virus, sometimes referred to as the wildfire virus in supplementary materials, spread across the world and caused the dead to reanimate. Everyone is already infected. You don't need to be bitten to turn. If you die for any reason, you come back. A bite or scratch from a walker causes a fever that kills you, and then the virus does the rest. But even a natural death, a heart attack, an accident, anything, will result in reanimation unless the brain is destroyed. The show never explains the origin of this virus. Robert Kirkman, the creator of the comics, has said on multiple occasions that he intentionally chose not to give an origin because the story was never about the disease. It was about the people living through it. In the comics and the show, the question isn't, why did this happen? It's, what do we do now? And I think that's a really smart creative choice, even if it frustrated some viewers who wanted a more scientific explanation. The collapse of civilization happened quickly. We see glimpses of it through the eyes of characters who were awake for it. People like Shane, Laurie, and Morgan. And later, through flashbacks and side stories. The military tried to contain it but couldn't. Cities fell. Hospitals were overrun. The government essentially ceased to exist. And within a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months at most, the world, as everyone knew it, was gone. And that's where we find Rick Grimes. Rick is a sheriff's deputy in King County, Georgia. Before the outbreak, he was a pretty ordinary guy. Married to Laurie, father to Carl, best friends and partners on the force with Shane Walsh. He wasn't anyone special in the grand scheme of things, just a decent man trying to do his job and take care of his family, which is exactly what makes him such a compelling protagonist. He's not a soldier or a scientist or a survivalist. He's just a guy, Shortly before the outbreak reached its tipping point, Rick was shot in the line of duty during a pursuit. The injury was serious enough to put him in a coma, and that's where the world left him behind. His family, his partner, everyone in his life had to make impossible choices, while Rick lay unconscious in a hospital bed. Laurie and Shane believed he was dead, or at the very least, beyond saving. Shane even tried to get Rick out of the hospital during the early days of the collapse, but with the military executing people in the hallways and walkers everywhere, he had to barricade Rick's door and leave. And I have to say, as much as people have complicated feelings about Shane later in the show, this moment always stood out to me. He didn't just run, he tried. He barricaded the door to keep walkers out. He checked for a heartbeat and the machines were off. He genuinely believed Rick was gone, and he made the agonizing decision to leave and protect Laurie and Carl instead. That context matters a lot for understanding everything that happens later between him and Rick. So Rick wakes up, and the first episode of The Walking Dead is honestly one of the best pilot episodes in television history. I don't think that's an exaggeration. It was directed by Frank Darabont, the man who directed The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, and it has this cinematic quality that most TV shows never even attempt. The pacing is deliberate. The sound design is incredible. All that silence punctuated by distant groans and the shuffle of feet. And Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick, carries the entire episode almost without dialogue for long stretches. Fun fact that always surprises people: Andrew Lincoln is British, born in London, raised in England. His real accent sounds nothing like Rick Grimes, and yet his Southern American accent in the show is so convincing that most viewers had no idea until they saw an interview with him. That's the kind of commitment that set the tone for the entire series. Rick wakes up in the hospital. The flowers by his bed are dead and dried out. The fourth is disconnected. He stumbles through empty hallways, past overturned gurneys and bloodstains on the walls. He finds a set of chained cafeteria doors with the words, "Don't open, dead inside," scrawled across them in paint. Hands push through the gap. He doesn't understand what's happening yet. Nobody told him. Nobody could. He makes it outside and the world is just gone. There are bodies everywhere. Military vehicles abandoned in the parking lot. A helicopter crashed in the distance. It's this overwhelming visual statement about total societal collapse, and Darabont shoots it like a horror film. It's gorgeous and terrifying at the same time. Rick eventually makes his way home on foot, still weak and confused. His house is empty. Laurie and Carl are gone, but there's no sign of violence. He doesn't know if they're alive or dead. And then he encounters his first walker in the park near his house, a woman crawling across the grass with half her body missing, and he still doesn't fully understand what he's looking at. That's when he meets Morgan Jones and his son Dwayne. Morgan and Dwayne have been surviving in a house nearby, and Morgan takes Rick in, feeds him, and explains the new world. This is our first real exposition scene, and it works because Morgan is such a warm, careful human character. He's not a hardened survivor yet. He's a father who lost his wife to the infection and can't bring himself to put her down, even though she wanders past the house as a walker every night. Lenny James, who plays Morgan, brings this quiet, devastating sadness to the role that sets the emotional tone for the entire series. Morgan tells Rick that people started getting sick, the dead started coming back, the military tried to stop it and couldn't, and now it's just survival. He teaches Rick the basics. Destroy the brain to kill them. Don't get bitten. Stay quiet. Move carefully. Rick, in turn, gives Morgan a walkie-talkie and tells him he'll turn it on every morning at dawn in case Morgan ever needs to reach him. That detail, that tiny gesture of connection and hope, is one of those small things that echoes throughout the entire run of the show. After parting ways with Morgan, Rick heads to Atlanta. Before leaving King County, he stops at the sheriff's station and gathers weapons and ammunition from the armory. He also encounters his first walker up close and personal, a woman crawling in the park, and he goes back to put her out of her misery. It's a small moment, but it tells you everything about Rick's character. He doesn't need to do that. She's not a threat, but he does it because it feels like the right thing to do. Rick drives to Atlanta because he's heard there's a refugee center there. The military was supposedly setting up a safe zone, So that's where Laurie and Carl would have gone, he reasons. He needs to find his family. That singular motivation, finding his family, drives everything in the first season, and honestly, continues to drive Rick for years afterward. He's not trying to save the world. He just wants to find his wife and son. Atlanta is, of course, not safe. The city has been completely overrun. Rick rides a horse into downtown Atlanta, which is this incredible visual that mirrors a kind of post-apocalyptic western. A lone lawman riding into a dead city. The horse gets swarmed and killed. Rick gets trapped under a tank. And just when it seems like it's over, a voice comes through the tank's radio. "Hey you, dumbass. Yeah, you in the tank. Cozy in there. That's Glenn. Glenn Rhee, a former pizza delivery boy from Michigan who survived because he knew the city's layout better than almost anyone. Glenn saves Rick's life, guides him through the streets of Atlanta, and becomes one of the most important characters in the entire series. Stephen Yeun plays Glenn with this infectious mix of humour, bravery and vulnerability that made him an instant fan favourite. He's quick, he's clever, and he's fundamentally good in a world that makes goodness really, really hard. Through Glenn, Rick meets a small group of survivors who have been scavenging in Atlanta for supplies. Among them are Andrea, a former civil rights attorney, and Merle Dixon, who is, to put it diplomatically, a problem. Merle is loud, racist, aggressive, and high on drugs. He starts a fight on the rooftop, and Rick handcuffs him to a pipe to keep him from getting everyone killed. This decision will have consequences that ripple through the first 3 seasons of the show. The group makes it back to their camp on the outskirts of Atlanta, and this is where Rick finds his family. Laurie, Carl, they're alive. They've been surviving with a group of people that includes some of the show's most iconic characters. Shane is there, of course. He's been leading the group in Rick's absence, and he's been sleeping with Laurie. Now, the show is careful to present this with some nuance. Laurie genuinely believed Rick was dead. Shane told her Rick was dead, and as far as Shane knew, that was true. The relationship between Laurie and Shane started from a place of grief and comfort, not betrayal. At least not intentionally. But when Rick walks into that camp alive, everything changes. The look on Shane's face in that moment is incredible. It's not joy. It's not even surprise. It's this slow realization that the life he'd started building, the family he'd been protecting, just got taken away by the one person he never expected to see again. The camp also includes Daryl Dixon, Merle's younger brother, who is this rough, feral, crossbow-carrying loner who initially seems like he might be trouble, just like Merle. Carol Pelletier, a quiet, timid woman trapped in an abusive marriage to her husband Ed. Dale Horvath, an older man with an RV and a constant pair of binoculars, who serves as the group's moral centre. Andrea and her younger sister Amy, T-Dog, who has one of the most underappreciated arcs in the early seasons, and several others who round out this small, vulnerable community of survivors. Life at the camp is fragile. They're surviving barely. Food runs are dangerous. The walkers are a constant threat. And there's this underlying tension between the people who want to stay put and wait for rescue, and the people who understand that rescue isn't coming. One of the first big decisions Rick makes is going back into Atlanta to retrieve the bag of guns he dropped and to rescue Merle. When they get to the rooftop, Merle is gone. He sawed off his own hand to escape the handcuffs, which is about as Merle Dixon as it gets. There's blood, a hacksaw, and no body. Daryl is furious. Rick feels responsible. And the question of what happened to Merle lingers for a long, long time. A group of walkers attacks the camp one evening while most of the group's fighters are away. Amy is killed. Ed is killed. Several others die. It's the first real loss the group experiences together. And it hits hard because up until this point, the camp felt somewhat safe. That illusion is shattered. Andrea holds her dead sister's body for hours, refusing to let anyone near her, waiting for Amy to reanimate so she can say goodbye before she puts her down. It's devastating. And it's the first time the show really shows you what this world does to people emotionally, not just physically. After the attack, the group decides they need to move. Rick suggests the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in Atlanta. If anyone is working on a cure or has answers, it would be there. Not everyone agrees. A man named Morales decides to take his family and head to Birmingham, Alabama, to find his own relatives. The group splits. Rick leads the rest toward the CDC. They arrive to find the building seemingly empty and locked down. After banging on the doors in desperation, a man inside, Dr. Edwin Jenner, opens the door and lets them in. The CDC is still functioning, at least partially, running on backup generators. Jenner is the last scientist left. Everyone else either fled or died. He's been alone for weeks, running experiments on tissue samples, trying to understand the virus. The group gets one night of relative normalcy at the CDC. Hot showers, wine, food. It's this brief, beautiful moment of peace that the show uses to let the characters breathe and let the audience see them as people rather than survivors. But the next morning, Jenner reveals the truth. There is no cure. The backup generators are almost out of fuel, and the building has a decontamination protocol that will ignite the air and destroy everything inside. Essentially, it's going to explode. Most of the group escapes. Jackie, one of the Atlanta survivors, chooses to stay. She tells them she's tired and she'd rather go out on her own terms. Jenner stays too. But before Rick leaves, Jenner whispers something to him. We don't hear what he says. That secret will be revealed later. But for now, it's just this mysterious, loaded moment between two men in a dying building. The group drives away from the CDC as it detonates behind them. Season 1 ends. 6 episodes. That's it. And yet it manages to set up an entire world, introduce a cast of characters you genuinely care about, and establish the core themes that will carry the show through 11 seasons. The idea that survival isn't just about staying alive, but about holding on to your humanity while you do it. The question of who you become when the rules disappear, and the quiet, persistent white hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be something better. I want to pause here for a second and talk about something that I think is easy to miss if you just power through the show. Season 1 feels different from everything that comes after. Part of that is the direction. Darabont shot it like a film series rather than episodic television, and part of it is the pacing. There are long stretches of silence. The score is minimal. The Walker encounters are genuinely scary in a way that becomes harder to sustain as the show goes on, and the characters become more experienced at dealing with them. If you go back and re-watch the pilot after you've seen the whole series, it's like watching a completely different show. Rick is so naive, so lost, so unprepared for what's coming. And there's something really poignant about that when you know where he ends up. Also, a behind-the-scenes note that I think is important context for the rest of the series. Frank Darabont, who created the show for television and directed that incredible pilot, was fired after season 1. The reasons are complicated and involved budget disputes with AMC, creative disagreements, and a lot of behind-the-scenes politics. But the result was that the show lost its original creative voice right as it was getting started. A lot of fans have always wondered what The Walking Dead would have looked like if Darabont had stayed. And honestly, it's one of those great what-if questions in television history. The show we got was still great in a lot of ways, but it became a different kind of great than what Darabont started. Alright, so the CDC is gone. The group is on the road. They have no shelter, limited supplies, and no plan beyond head somewhere safer. And that somewhere turns out to be a stretch of highway outside Atlanta, where they run into a massive traffic jam of abandoned vehicles. While scavenging the cars for supplies, a herd of walkers comes through, which is the first time we see a truly massive group of the dead, just moving together like a slow, mindless river. Everyone hides under cars or plays dead except for Sophia, Carol's 12-year-old daughter, who panics and runs into the woods. Rick chases after her, kills the 2 walkers pursuing her, and tells her to hide by a creek while he leads the rest away. When he comes back, she's gone. The search for Sophia becomes the emotional backbone of season 2. Every decision, every argument, every relationship dynamic in the first half of the season connects back to this missing little girl. And while some viewers at the time felt it was too slow, looking back, it was actually a really smart storytelling choice because it forced the show to focus on character rather than action. During the search, a man named Otis accidentally shoots Carl while hunting a deer. Carl takes a bullet to the abdomen and is in critical condition. Otis leads them to the only person nearby who might be able to help, Herschel Green. Herschel is an older veterinarian, not a surgeon, who lives on a beautiful, isolated farm with his family. He's a man of deep faith, kind and principled, and he agrees to try to save Carl, even though the surgery he needs is well beyond what a vet would normally do. The farm becomes the group's home for the rest of the season, and Herschel's family becomes central to the show going forward. His eldest daughter, Maggie, is strong, capable, and takes absolutely no nonsense from anyone. His younger daughter, Beth, is quieter, more sheltered, still holding on to a kind of innocence that most people in this world have already lost. Herschel himself becomes one of the most important moral voices on the show, a man who represents the possibility that you can survive without losing your soul. Scott Wilson, the actor who played Herschel, brought this warmth and gravity to the role that made him one of the show's most beloved characters almost immediately. Carl survives the surgery, but it requires supplies that the farm doesn't have. Shane and Otis go on a run to a nearby FEMA shelter to get the medical equipment Herschel needs. And this is where Shane crosses a line that he can never come back from. Surrounded by walkers and running out of time, Shane shoots Otis in the leg and leaves him to bear devoured by the dead. He uses Otis as a distraction so he can escape with the supplies. When he gets back to the farm, he lies about what happened, says Otis sacrificed himself. He shaves his head in the bathroom mirror afterward, and you can see it in his eyes. Something shifted, something broke. Shane's arc in Season 2 is one of the most compelling villain stories in the show's history. And I say villain with some hesitation because Shane isn't a bad person in the traditional sense. He's a man who has decided that the old rules don't apply anymore, and that survival justifies anything. He genuinely believes he's making the hard choices that Rick is too soft to make. He thinks he's the better man for Laurie and the better protector for Carl. And the terrifying thing is that, in some ways, he's not entirely wrong. Shane's instincts about the world, about how dangerous it is, about how quickly you need to act, those instincts turn out to be pretty accurate. The difference is that Rick finds a way to be hard when he needs to be without losing himself, and Shane just keeps crossing lines until there's no coming back. Meanwhile, Glenn and Maggie start a relationship. It begins as a physical thing, a we might die tomorrow kind of connection, but it deepens quickly into something real. Glenn is sweet, honest, and a little awkward, and Maggie is fierce, direct, and practical. They complement each other perfectly, and their love story becomes one of the most enduring and tragic threads in the entire series. I genuinely believe Glenn and Maggie are one of the best couples in television history, and the fact that their relationship was born in a zombie apocalypse on a farm in Georgia somehow makes it more romantic, not less. Laurie is pregnant, and the question of paternity hangs over everything. Is the baby Rick's or Shane's? The show never definitively answers this in the way you might expect, though there are strong implications later on. What matters more than biology is the emotional reality. Rick claims the child as his own regardless. That choice, to love this baby no matter what, says everything about who Rick is. And then comes the barn. Herschel has been keeping walkers in his barn. His wife, his neighbours, people he knew and loved before they turned. He doesn't see them as dead. He sees them as sick. He genuinely believes that someday someone will find a cure, and these people will come back. It's a heartbreaking delusion, and it speaks to how desperately people in this world cling to hope, even when the evidence is overwhelming. The barn represents everything Herschel hasn't been able to let go of. Glenn discovers the barn first and tells the group. Shane is furious. Rick tries to negotiate with Herschel, to find a middle ground, to keep the peace because they need the farm. But Shane forces the issue. He breaks the barn open and the group guns down every walker inside, while Herschel watches in horror. And then the last walker stumbles out of the barn, and it's Sophia, Carol's daughter, the little girl they've been searching for all season. She was bitten, she turned, and somehow she ended up in Herschel's barn. Nobody knows exactly how. It doesn't matter. What matters is that everyone spent weeks searching for this child, holding on to hope, and she was right there the whole time, dead and waiting. Rick steps forward and shoots Sophia. Carol collapses. The group is silent. It is one of the most devastating scenes in the entire series, and I think it's the moment where The Walking Dead proved it was willing to go places that other shows wouldn't. There are no happy endings in this world. Not guaranteed ones anyway. I still think about that scene. The silence afterward. The way Carol just breaks. The way Rick's hand shakes. It's masterfully done, and it changes the show permanently. After the barn, nothing feels safe anymore. If Sophia can die, anyone can. And while we're on the farm, I want to talk about Dale for a moment, because I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he represented. Dale Horvath, the older man with the RV and the fishing hat, was the group's conscience. He was the one who argued against killing a prisoner named Randall, a young man they'd captured from a hostile group. The rest of the group, especially Shane, wanted to execute Randall to protect the farm. Dale went person to person, pleading his case, insisting that killing a defenseless prisoner would cost them their humanity. "The world we knew is gone," he said, "but keeping our humanity? That's a choice." Nobody listened. The group voted to kill Randall, and Dale was devastated. He walked out into the fields alone that night, and a walker caught him off guard and tore open his stomach. Daryl put him down as an act of mercy. Dale's death was significant, not because he was a major action character, but because his death represented the loss of a certain kind of moral clarity. He was the last person in the group who genuinely believed that the old rules still mattered, that decency was still worth fighting for, even when it was impractical. After Dale, the group's moral compass became more flexible, more situational. Rick took on some of Dale's role, but Rick was always willing to bend in ways Dale never would. And I think the show was smart to kill Dale relatively early because it forced the audience to sit with the uncomfortable reality that being a good person in this world might actually get you killed. Jeffrey Demon, who played Dale, was very close friends with Frank Darabont. When Darabont was fired after season 1, Damon reportedly asked to be written off the show in solidarity. That's a remarkable act of loyalty, and it means Dale's death carries this extra layer of behind-the-scenes meaning. The character who represented moral principles was played by an actor who stood on principle in real life. There's also something worth noting about Carol during the farm era that's easy to overlook. After Sophia's death, Carol goes very quiet. She withdraws. She stops participating in group discussions. Some viewers read this as passivity, and it is, but it's also the cocoon stage of one of television's greatest character transformations. Carol is absorbing. She's watching Shane and Rick and Daryl and learning. She's figuring out what kind of person survives in this world, and she's starting the long, slow process of becoming that person. The Carol who burns bodies at the prison, the Carol who destroys Terminus, the Carol who infiltrates the wolves. That Carol is being born right here in the silence of her grief on Herschel's farm. You just can't see it yet. The second half of season 2 escalates the tension between Rick and Shane until it becomes unbearable. Shane grows more paranoid, more aggressive, more convinced that he needs to take control. He lures Rick out into a field one night, planning to kill him and tell the group it was an accident. Rick sees through it. They face each other in the dark, and Rick stabs Shane. What happens next is significant. Carl appears, Shane reanimates, because everyone is infected, remember. And Carl shoots his reanimated father figure in the head to save his father. A 13-year-old boy shooting his dad's best friend. The weight of that moment on Carl's development is immense and echoes through the rest of the series. The gunshot draws a massive herd of walkers to the farm. The group fights back, but the farm is overrun. They scatter in different directions, losing track of each other in the chaos. Herschel's barn burns. The idyllic setting that had been their refuge is destroyed. They regroup on the highway, and Rick reveals the secret that Jenna whispered to him at the CDC. Everyone is already infected. No matter how you die, you come back. The group is shaken. They no longer fully trust Rick. And Rick, for the first time, asserts himself not as a democratic leader, but as an authority. He's tired of being second-guessed. He's tired of trying to make everyone happy. This isn't a democracy anymore, he says. It's a loaded statement, and it signals the beginning of a darker, harder Rick Grimes. And somewhere in the chaos of the farm's fall, Andrea gets separated from the group. She runs through the woods all night, exhausted and out of ammunition, until she's cornered by walkers and saved at the last second by a hooded figure wielding a katana, leading two armless, jawless walkers on chains like pets. That's Michonne, and her arrival is one of the most iconic character introductions in the show's history. Season 2 also has some interesting behind-the-scenes context worth mentioning. This was the first full season without Frank Darabont at the helm, and you can feel the growing pains. The budget per episode was actually reduced even though they doubled the episode count from 6 to 13, which meant the show had to be more contained. That's partly why so much of Season 2 takes place on the farm. It was financially practical, even if some viewers found it narratively frustrating. John Bernthal, who played Shane, has talked in interviews about how much he loved the character and how carefully he tried to make Shane's descent feel earned rather than sudden. He said that he played Shane as someone who truly believed he was the hero of his own story, which is why the performance works so well. After leaving The Walking Dead, Bernthal went on to star as the Punisher in the Marvel Universe, which honestly feels like a spiritual continuation. The man has a gift for playing characters who operate in moral grey areas. In the comics, Shane dies much earlier. Like the first volume earlier, Rick kills him almost immediately, and Carl shoots him afterward, just like in the show. But the show kept Shane alive much longer because Bernthal's performance was so compelling that the writers wanted to explore that Rick-Shane dynamic more fully. And I think that was the right call. The longer Shane survives, the more tension builds, and the more complex both characters become. Alright, so the farm is gone. The group is back on the road with no shelter and winter approaching. Between seasons 2 and 3, about 8 months pass off screen. When we rejoin the group in the season 3 premiere, they've been moving from place to place, clearing houses and buildings for temporary shelter, always running, always hungry. Laurie is very visibly pregnant. Carl has hardened. The entire group looks worn down and desperate. And then they find the prison. The prison is a massive, fortified complex, surrounded by fences and walls. It's overrun with walkers, but the infrastructure is sound. Clear it out, and you've got the most defensible location the group has ever had. Multiple cell blocks, a commissary, an infirmary, guard towers with sightlines. For a group that's been sleeping in cars and abandoned houses for months, this is paradise. Clearing the prison is brutal, methodical work. The group moves through the interior cell block by cell block, corridor by corridor, killing walkers in tight spaces where a single mistake means death. During one of these clearing operations, Herschel is bitten on the lower leg. Rick, acting on pure instinct and adrenaline, amputates Herschel's leg with a hatchet to stop the infection from spreading. It's violent, desperate, and it works. Herschel survives. This is also where we meet a small group of surviving inmates who have been living in the prison cafeteria since the outbreak began. They've been completely cut off from the outside world and have no idea how bad things have gotten. The dynamic between Rick's group and the prisoners is tense. Some of them integrate, others don't. One of the prisoners, a man named Thomas, tries to kill Rick during a walker clearing operation, and Rick puts a machete in his head without hesitation. Season 3 Rick is a very different man from Season 1 Rick. The prison becomes home. It's the first time the group has had real walls, real security, and a sense of permanence since the farm. They start to build something resembling a community. They grow food in the yard. They set up watch rotations. For a little while, things are almost okay. And then we need to talk about the governor. Somewhere in the Georgia countryside, there's a walled town called Woodbury. It looks idyllic from the outside. Clean streets, friendly people, cold drinks, and even entertainment. It's run by a man who goes by the governor, real name Philip Blake, and he is one of the most fascinating villains the show ever produced. On the surface, he's charming, warm smile, firm handshake. He makes you feel safe. And underneath all of that, he is deeply, profoundly broken. David Morrissey plays the governor with this unsettling blend of charisma and menace. He can go from gentle and fatherly to cold and violent in the space of a single scene, and you never quite know which version of him you're going to get. He's not a cartoon villain. He genuinely believes he's building something good. He tells himself that everything he does, the murders, the manipulation, the brutality, is for the protection of his people. And in his own twisted way, he's not entirely lying. He does keep Woodbury safe. He does provide stability, but the cost is control, obedience, and silence about the things he does to maintain it. Andrea ends up in Woodbury. After being separated from the group at the farm, she and Michonne survive together for months before finding the town. Andrea is drawn to the normalcy. She wants to believe that civilization can be rebuilt, and the governor represents that possibility. Michonne doesn't trust him from the start. She sees through the charm, senses the violence underneath, and wants to leave. Eventually, Michonne does leave, and she makes her way to the prison where she joins Rick's group and becomes one of the most important characters in the series. Michonne is played by Danai Gurira, and I honestly think her introduction marks a turning point for the show. Michonne is fierce, intelligent, resourceful, and carries a katana like it's an extension of her body. Her backstory, which we learn gradually over many seasons, involves the loss of her partner and her young son during the early days of the outbreak. The two walkers she keeps on chains are their reanimated corpses, stripped of their jaws and arms so they can't bite or grab, which serves both as camouflage, because walkers ignore other walkers, and as a form of penance. Michonne blamed herself for their deaths, and keeping them was her way of not letting go. Over time, Michonne becomes Rick's closest ally, his co-leader, and eventually his romantic partner. Their relationship is one of the most organic and emotionally satisfying arcs in the show. It develops slowly, built on mutual respect and shared trauma, and by the time they're together, it feels inevitable in the best possible way. Back at the prison, Laurie goes into labor. The birth happens during a walker breach, when a group of the dead get into the prison through a compromised section of the building. Maggie helps deliver the baby, but there are complications. Laurie is bleeding out. There's no way to save her without a cesarean section, and doing that without proper medical equipment means she will die. Laurie says goodbye to Carl. She tells him to do what's right, to always make the hard choices when they come, and that she's sorry. Maggie delivers the baby. Laurie dies. And Carl, who is maybe 13 years old at this point, shoots his own mother in the head to prevent her from reanimating. I want to sit with that for a moment because I think it's one of the most important scenes in the entire series. Not just because of what happens, but because of what it does to Carl. This is a child who has now killed his father's best friend, watched his mother die, and shot her himself. The weight of that is immeasurable, and you can trace a direct line from this moment to who Carl becomes in later seasons. He's not just growing up, he's being forged by grief and violence into something harder and older than any kid should ever have to be. Rick's reaction when he finds out is absolutely crushing. Andrew Lincoln delivers one of the most raw, unguarded performances I've ever seen. Rick doesn't speak. He just collapses. The sounds he makes aren't even words. They're just pain. It's the kind of acting that transcends the show and becomes something genuinely human and terrible and real. The baby is named Judith, and for the rest of the series, Judith represents hope. She is the first baby born into this world, and her survival becomes a symbol of the possibility that life can continue, that something new and good can exist even in the middle of all this death. The governor discovers the prison and sees it as a threat. He sends Merle, who is now his right-hand man, to deal with the problem. Merle captures Glenn and Maggie and brings them to Woodbury for interrogation. Glenn is beaten brutally. Maggie is threatened with sexual violence. It's the show at its darkest, and the performances from Stephen Yeun and Lauren Cohan are remarkable. Glenn refuses to break even when they put a walker in the room with him while he's tied to a chair. He kills it with his bare hands and the broken arm of the chair. It's one of the most badass scenes in the entire series. Rick and the group mount a rescue mission to Woodbury to get Glenn and Maggie back. During the chaos, Michonne finds the governor's private apartment and discovers his darkest secret. He's been keeping his zombified daughter, Penny, chained up in a room, brushing her hair and talking to her as if she's still alive. Michonne kills Penny, and in the ensuing fight, she stabs the governor in the eye with a piece of glass. He loses the eye and his fragile grip on sanity along with it. The conflict between the prison and Woodbury escalates through the rest of Season 3. Merle, caught between his loyalty to the governor and his love for his brother Daryl, eventually turns on Woodbury and tries to assassinate the governor, alone. He fails. The governor kills him and leaves his body to reanimate. When Daryl finds his brother stumbling around as a walker and has to put him down, it's one of the most heartbreaking moments in the show. Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl, delivers this scene with a raw, ugly grief that feels completely real. Daryl doesn't cry beautifully. He sobs and stabs and screams. Andrea tries to broker peace between the prison and Woodbury, but the governor is beyond reason at this point. He captures Andrea and locks her in a room with Milton, his former advisor, who he's already stabbed and left to die and turn. Andrea tries to free herself, but runs out of time. Milton reanimates and bites her. When Rick and the group find her, it's too late. Andrea takes a gun and ends her own life. The governor launches a final assault on the prison, but his own people turn on him when they realize how far he's willing to go. He massacres most of his own soldiers in a rage and disappears. The remaining Woodbury residents, civilians who never wanted any part of the fighting, are taken in by Rick's group at the prison. Among them are Tyrese and his sister Sasha, who become important characters going forward. Season 4 opens with the prison functioning as a genuine community. They've got gardens, a council that makes decisions, and new people arriving regularly. It's the closest thing to stability the show has had since The Farm, and it's built on much stronger foundations. Herschel serves as the moral centre. Rick has stepped back from leadership to focus on farming and raising Judith, and things are almost peaceful. Naturally, this doesn't last. A flu-like illness tears through the prison. People are getting sick and dying, and when they die, they turn. The prison becomes a death trap from the inside. Carol makes a devastating decision. She kills 2 sick people, Karen and David, and burns their bodies to try to stop the spread. When Rick finds out, he exiles her. He drives her to a car, gives her supplies, and tells her she can't come back. It's one of the hardest choices Rick makes in the entire series, and it fundamentally changes his relationship with Carol going forward. The illness is eventually contained, but the damage is done. People have died. Trust has been shaken, and the governor returns. He spent months wandering, broken and alone. He finds a family, a woman named Lily, her daughter Megan, and her elderly father. He starts to rebuild himself, or at least he tries to. He tells them his name is Brian. He protects them. He smiles. And for a few episodes, you almost believe he's changed. But he hasn't. He can't. He takes over a new group of survivors, rebuilds his army, and marches on the prison. The mid-season finale of Season 4 is one of the most important episodes in the show's history. The governor rolls up to the prison gates with a tank and 2 hostages, Herschel and Michonne. He demands that Rick's group leave. Rick tries to negotiate. He gives this incredible speech about how they can all live together, how there's room, how they don't have to do this. And for a moment, even some of the governor's people seem like they might listen. Then the governor takes Michonne's katana and cuts Herschel's head off. The prison erupts into war. The tank smashes through the fences. Walkers pour in. People die on both sides. Rick and the governor fight hand to hand in the mud. Michonne runs the governor through with her katana. Lily finishes him off. The prison is destroyed. The group scatters again, separated and running. Herschel's death hit the fanbase hard. Scott Wilson was universally beloved in the role, and losing Herschel meant losing the show's primary voice of reason and compassion. I remember reading interviews where the cast talked about how difficult that scene was to film, how Wilson himself was emotional on set, and how everyone knew it was the right storytelling choice, even though it hurt. Good storytelling should hurt sometimes. That's how you know it matters. The second half of Season 4 follows the scattered groups as they slowly make their way toward each other and toward a place called Terminus. Signs along the railroad tracks promise sanctuary. Those who arrive survive. It's hopeful. It sounds too good to be true. Along the way, we get some of the show's best character episodes. These are the quiet ones, the ones where the action slows down and you just spend time with people you've come to care about. And the show trusts that's enough to hold your attention. For a sleep video, I think these are actually the best episodes because they have this meditative, reflective quality that the big action episodes don't. Rick and Carl spend time alone together after the prison, and their dynamic has shifted in a really interesting way. Carl is angry. He's angry at Rick for not being strong enough to stop the governor. He's angry at the world for taking his mother. And he's reaching an age where he's starting to question whether he even needs his father anymore. There's an episode where Rick is unconscious from his injuries, and Carl has to survive completely alone. He goes out, finds food, kills walkers, and for a brief moment he thinks he can do this by himself. Then Rick stirs and makes a sound that Carl mistakes for reanimation, and Carl points a gun at his own father and can't pull the trigger. He collapses. He's still a kid. He still needs his dad. It's a beautifully honest depiction of a teenager caught between wanting independence and needing safety. Michonne, travelling alone, has a flashback to her life before the outbreak. We see her partner Mike and his friend Terry and her young son Andre. They're in an apartment. They're talking about art and normalcy. And then it shifts, and we see the moment when Michonne came home to find Mike and Terry bitten, high on drugs, useless, and Andre gone. The two walkers she's been dragging on chains this whole time are Mike and Terry. Her penance, her camouflage, her punishment for leaving her son with people who couldn't protect him. She let them turn, and she kept them because losing them completely would have meant losing the last tether to her old life. It's one of the most heartbreaking backstory reveals in the entire series, and Dana Gurira conveys the full weight of it without saying much at all. Daryl and Beth spend time together on the road, and their dynamic is this unlikely, tender friendship between a hardened survivor and a sheltered young woman. Beth is Herschel's youngest daughter, the one who tried to take her own life back on the farm, the one who sang songs to Judith. She's soft in a way that should be a liability in this world, but somehow it isn't. She and Daryl end up in a rural house, and Beth convinces Daryl to drink moonshine with her. They play a drinking game. They talk about who they were before. Daryl, for the first time in the series, opens up about his childhood. His father was abusive. His mother died in a house fire, possibly drunk, possibly on purpose. He grew up in poverty, in violence, with nobody who cared about him except Merle, who wasn't exactly a model role model. Beth tells him none of that matters anymore. You got to stay who you are, not who you were, she says. Then they burn the cabin down and walk away together, giving Daryl the finger as it goes up in flames. It's cathartic and strange, and one of my favourite scenes in the entire show. The image of Beth and Daryl standing in front of a burning house, flipping it off, while the world literally burns around them. That's poetry. It's also maybe the most accurate depiction of how young people and traumatized people actually process grief. Not through thoughtful reflection, but through raw, impulsive acts that feel like rebellion against a universe that keeps taking things. Tyrese and Carol end up together, which is painfully ironic because Carol killed Tyrese's girlfriend Karen at the prison, and Tyrese doesn't know yet. They're traveling with Judith and two young sisters, Lizzie and Mika. Lizzie has a deeply disturbing relationship with walkers. She sees them as friends, as just different. She feeds them, she plays with them, she names them. Mika is the normal one, sweet and gentle, and she keeps telling Carol that Lizzie isn't right, that something is wrong with her sister. Carol sees it too, but doesn't know what to do about it. And then, in one of the most unsettling scenes in the entire series, Lizzie kills Mika. She stabs her sister to death because she wants Mika to come back as a walker, so Carol and Tyrese will understand that walkers aren't really dead. When Carol and Tyrese find them, Lizzie is standing over Mika's body with bloody hands, and she says she was about to do the same thing to Judith. Carol takes Lizzie outside, tells her to look at the flowers, and shoots her. Look at the flowers. Lizzie became one of the most quoted and discussed moments in the show's history. It's haunting, heartbreaking, and it asks this impossible question about what you do when a child becomes dangerous. There's no good answer. There never is. The scene is a direct reference to Of Mice and Men, the Steinbeck novel, which makes it even sadder. Carol is George, Lizzie is Lenny, and the flowers are the rabbits they were never going to tend. After this, Carol confesses to Tyrese about Karen. She tells him the truth and puts a gun on the table between them, essentially telling him he can kill her if he wants to. Tyrese, after a long silence, forgives her. He forgives her because he's seen what Carol just had to do with Lizzie, and he understands now that the world forces people into impossible choices. It's a remarkable scene. Two people who have every reason to destroy each other choosing mercy instead. Bob Stookie, a medic the group picked up earlier, has his own arc during these road episodes. Bob is a recovering alcoholic who lost 2 previous groups before joining Rick's. He's haunted by survivors' guilt and loneliness, but Sasha gives him something to hold on to. Their budding romance is sweet and tentative, 2 broken people trying to find something good in the wreckage. Bob has this philosophy that you have to appreciate the good moments because they're rare and they matter. He smiles more than anyone in the show, which in this world makes him either the bravest person alive or the most delusional. Maybe both. When the Terminus survivors later capture Bob and eat his leg in front of him, Bob laughs and tells them they're eating tainted meat because he's been bitten. Whether the tainted meat would have actually harmed them is never confirmed, but the look on their faces is priceless. Bob dies shortly after, and his last words to Rick are a reminder to stay hopeful. Nightmares end. They shouldn't end who you are. Eventually, the scattered groups all converge on Terminus, and Terminus is not what it promised to be. It's run by a group led by Gareth, and the reason they have so much food and seem so well fed is that they're cannibals. They've been luring survivors in with those signs and then trapping and eating them. The season ends with Rick's group locked in a train car at Terminus, seemingly doomed. Rick's final line of season 4 is one of the most quoted in the series. He looks at his captors, looks at his people, and says with complete conviction, "They're screwing with the wrong people." In the comic version, he uses a different word than screwing, but the sentiment is the same. Rick Grimes is no longer a man who negotiates. He's a man who survives. Season 5 opens with one of the most satisfying rescues in the show's history. Carol, who has been tracking the group on her own since being exiled by Rick, single-handedly destroys Terminus. She covers herself in walker guts for camouflage, sets off an explosion that breaches the compound's walls, and creates enough chaos for Rick and the group to free themselves and fight their way out. It's Carol at her absolute best, and it's the moment where she fully transforms from the timid, abused woman we met in Season 1 into one of the most capable and dangerous survivors in the entire show. The group escapes Terminus and deals with Gareth and his remaining cannibals quickly and brutally. Rick made a promise to Gareth about what he would do if they ever met again, and he keeps that promise in a scene that's genuinely difficult to watch. The brutality is the point. This is who Rick is now. This is what the world has made him. Along the way, the group picks up several new characters. Abraham Ford, a military man on a mission to get a scientist named Eugene to Washington, D.C., because Eugene claims to know what caused the outbreak and how to cure it. Rosita Espinosa, Abraham's girlfriend and a skilled fighter in her own right. And Eugene himself, who is awkward, brilliant, and hiding a massive secret. He doesn't actually know the cure. He made it up to survive, to make himself valuable enough that someone like Abraham would protect him. When this truth comes out, Abraham beats Eugene unconscious. It's ugly, but you understand why. Abraham's entire purpose, his reason for living after losing his family, was getting Eugene to Washington. And it was all a lie. Father Gabriel Stokes enters the picture here too. He's a priest who survived the outbreak by locking himself inside his church while his congregation screamed and pounded on the doors outside, begging to be let in. He listened to them die, and he's been carrying that guilt ever since. Seth Gilliam plays Gabriel with this fragile, trembling energy that makes you alternate between pitying him and being frustrated by him. He's a coward, but he's trying not to be. His arc over the next several seasons is one of the show's most underrated. Beth's storyline in the first half of Season 5 takes her to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. She wakes up there after being kidnapped by a group of police officers led by a woman named Dawn. Grady operates on a system of debts. If they save your life, you owe them labour. It's essentially indentured servitude dressed up as civilization. And Beth, with her quiet stubbornness, refuses to accept it. She befriends a doctor named Edwards and a fellow captive named Noah, and she starts planning her escape. The rescue attempt goes wrong. Rick's group negotiates a hostage exchange with Dawn, but at the last moment, Dawn demands that Noah stay. Beth says, "I get it now," and stabs Dawn with a pair of scissors. Dawn shoots Beth in the head, seemingly on instinct. Daryl shoots Dawn immediately after. It's over in seconds. Daryl carrying Beth's body out of the hospital is one of the most iconic images in the show. Beth was young, kind and full of hope, and her death feels so senseless, so avoidable, that it hits harder than almost any other loss in the series. Maggie, who has been racing to rescue her sister, arrives just in time to see Daryl walk out with Beth in his arms. The scream that Lauren Cohan delivers in that scene is absolutely gutting. Emily Kinney, who played Beth, has talked about how the cast was genuinely emotional during the filming of that scene. Norman Reedus reportedly carried her for take after take without complaint. The bond between the actors mirrored the bond between the characters, and that's one of the things that made The Walking Dead special at its best. The people making it cared about the stories they were telling. Beth's death also has this cruel irony to it. She survived the farm. She survived the prison. She survived being kidnapped and held captive. She was right there, standing in front of Daryl, seconds away from freedom, and then one impulsive act, a scissors stab that was more defiant than strategic, took everything. The randomness of it is the point, I think. In this world, you don't always get a heroic death. Sometimes you just die because one wrong decision happens at the wrong moment. After Beth, the group continues north, and they lose Tyrese along the way. Tyrese is bitten while visiting Noah's old neighborhood. Noah was the boy Beth helped at the hospital, and he wanted to go home, to see if his family was still alive. They weren't, and while Tyrese is in the house, looking at photos of a family that no longer exists, a walker bites him on the arm. The group tries to amputate, just like they did with Herschel, but Tyrese has lost too much blood. He dies in the back of a car, hallucinating conversations with the people he's lost. Bob, Beth, Lizzie, Mika, even the governor. Tyrese's death episode is one of the most stylistically unique in the series. It's almost dreamlike. The hallucinations blur with reality. There's this recurring image of a radio playing news reports that mix real-world atrocities with events from the show, and it creates this disorienting sense that maybe the world was always like this, always violent, always cruel, and the outbreak just made it more visible. Chad Coleman, who played Tyrese, brings this incredible gentleness to his final scenes. Tyrese was always the biggest, strongest person in any room, and yet his defining characteristic was his reluctance to use that strength for violence. He was a pacifist, trapped in a warrior's body, and losing him felt like losing the last remnant of a kinder world. Noah doesn't last much longer after that. He dies a truly horrible death in a revolving door, trapped and eaten by walkers, while Glenn watches helplessly from the other side of the glass. It's one of the most graphically disturbing deaths in the show, and it serves as a harsh reminder that not everyone gets a meaningful death. Some people just get eaten in a revolving door, and the unfairness of that is part of what makes this show feel real. The group is exhausted by the time they reach Virginia. They've lost so many people. They're low on food, low on water, low on hope. There's a beautiful stretch of episodes where the group is just walking down a road, barely talking, barely functioning. A pack of wild dogs approaches, and Sasha shoots them for food. They find jugs of water in the road with a note that says, "From a friend," and they're too paranoid to drink it. A storm hits, and they shelter in a barn, and the walkers come, and the whole group pushes against the barn doors together, in the rain and the wind and the lightning. And it's this primal, wordless act of collective survival that feels almost spiritual. It's in this barn that Maggie wakes up to find a man standing there, with clean clothes and a warm smile. His name is Aaron. He's from a place called Alexandria, and he wants to invite them in. The group continues north and eventually finds Alexandria, a walled community in Virginia that has been remarkably well preserved. It has houses, running water, electricity powered by solar panels, and people who have been living in relative comfort throughout the apocalypse. It's run by Deanna Monroe, a former congresswoman from Ohio, and it's exactly the kind of place Rick has been looking for. Too exactly, maybe. The culture shock is enormous. Aaron, an Alexandrian recruiter, brings Rick's group to the community, and the contrast between the two groups is almost comical. Rick's people are dirty, traumatized, and hyper-vigilant. They've been sleeping in the woods and killing to survive for years. The Alexandrians are hosting cocktail parties and arguing about what to make for dinner. They've never had to fight. They've never lost anyone in a meaningful way. They have absolutely no idea what the world is really like outside those walls. Rick takes a shower, shaves his beard, and puts on clean clothes. He looks like a different person, but he isn't. He's the same man who just slaughtered a group of cannibals, and the thin veneer of civilization that Alexandria represents doesn't change what he's become. There's this wonderful tension in Season 5 where Rick tries to integrate into Alexandria, while also quietly preparing to take it over if things go wrong. He's protecting his people first, Alexandria second. Deanna sees potential in Rick and makes him the community's constable. But Rick increasingly butts heads with the residents, particularly a man named Pete, who Rick discovers is abusing his wife, Jessie. Rick eventually beats Pete nearly to death in the middle of the street, which terrifies the Alexandrians and nearly gets Rick exiled. Deanna's husband, Reg, is killed by Pete during the confrontation, and Deanna gives Rick permission to execute Pete. He does, right in front of the entire community, and standing there, watching it all happen, is Morgan Jones. The same Morgan from the very first episode, the man who saved Rick's life when he woke up from his coma. He's been tracking Rick for a long time, following messages and trail markers, and he arrives in Alexandria at the exact moment Rick pulls the trigger. The look on Morgan's face says everything. This is not the man he remembers. Morgan's journey between Season 1 and his return is one of the show's most interesting background stories. After Rick left him, Morgan spiraled. His son Dwayne was killed, likely turned, and Morgan descended into a paranoid, violent breakdown. He set up traps across his town, wrote cryptic messages on the walls, and killed anyone who came close, living or dead. Rick encountered him again, briefly in Season 3, and found him completely unrecognizable, a broken, dangerous man living in a fortress of his own madness. But between that encounter and his arrival in Alexandria, Morgan met a man named Eastman, a former forensic psychologist who lived alone in a cabin in the woods. Eastman taught Morgan Aikido, gave him a bow staff, and more importantly, gave him a philosophy, the belief that all life is precious. That killing is never the answer. That peace is always possible. Morgan rebuilds himself around this principle, and by the time he reaches Alexandria, he's calm, centered, and absolutely committed to non-violence, which, as you might imagine, puts him at odds with just about everyone in Rick's group. The world they live in doesn't reward pacifism. It punishes it, and Morgan's refusal to kill, even when lives are at stake, creates real friction in the seasons to come. Season 6 is where things start building toward the show's biggest and most controversial moments. The season opens with a massive logistical challenge. There's a quarry near Alexandria, filled with thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of walkers. The quarry's natural barriers have been holding them in, but those barriers are failing. Rick devises a plan to lead the herd away from Alexandria, using carefully placed vehicles and volunteers. The plan goes sideways almost immediately. A group called the Wolves, savage scavengers who carve W's into their foreheads, attack Alexandria while most of the fighters are away dealing with the herd. The attack is brutal and chaotic. Several Alexandrians die. Morgan refuses to kill any of the wolves, choosing instead to knock them unconscious or let them go, which directly leads to more deaths. Carol, on the other hand, disguises herself as one of the wolves and starts picking them off one by one. The contrast between Carol's ruthless efficiency and Morgan's absolute refusal to kill is one of the most interesting dynamics in the season. The herd eventually reaches Alexandria. The walls hold for a while, but a damaged section collapses and walkers flood in. Rick leads a group through the streets, covered in walker guts for camouflage, but Jesse's younger son Sam panics, draws attention, and is eaten. Jessie freezes, is pulled down by walkers, and Rick has to hack off her hand because she won't let go of Carl. Her older son, Ron, traumatized and enraged, pulls a gun on Rick. Michonne kills Ron, but not before Ron gets off a shot that hits Carl in the eye. Carl survives, but he loses the eye. The injury becomes one of his defining physical characteristics going forward. And Chandler Riggs, the actor, does really impressive work portraying Carl's adjustment to this new reality. Rick, fueled by rage and desperation, charges into the herd alone and starts killing walkers with a hatchet. One by one, the other survivors join him. Even the soft, untrained Alexandrians pick up weapons and fight. It's the moment Alexandria transforms from a sheltered enclave into a real community, forged in crisis. By morning, the herd is defeated, and Alexandria, battered but standing, has earned its survival. This is also where we learn that Maggie is pregnant. Glenn is going to be a father. This detail, dropped relatively quietly into the season, becomes enormously important very soon. And now I need to talk about the Glenn dumpster incident, because it was one of the most divisive moments in the show's history. During the quarry operation in an earlier episode, Glenn and a man named Nicholas are surrounded by walkers on top of a dumpster. Nicholas, overwhelmed by panic, shoots himself in the head. His body falls into Glenn, pushing both of them off the dumpster and into the herd below. The camera angle makes it look very much like Glenn is being torn apart. The show then doesn't mention Glenn for 3 full episodes. Fans lost their minds. Social media exploded. People analysed every frame, every sound effect, every camera angle. Was Glenn dead? Was it Nicholas's body being eaten on top of Glenn? When Glenn eventually reappeared alive, having crawled under the dumpster while the walkers were distracted by Nicholas's corpse, a lot of viewers felt manipulated. The show had deliberately used misleading cinematography to make it look like Glenn died, and the weeks of ambiguity felt less like suspense and more like a cheap trick. I understand the frustration. It undercut the stakes in a show where stakes are supposed to be the whole point. If you can fake out a death that obvious, then nothing feels real anymore. That said, the relief when Glenn came back was real too, and knowing what was coming for him, which we'll get to soon, the dumpster fake-out takes on this tragic quality. They gave us hope. They let us think he was safe, and then they took it away for real. The second half of Season 6 introduces the Hilltop Colony, a community living in a large estate surrounded by walls, led by a cowardly man named Gregory. A man named Jesus, real name Paul Rovia, contacts Rick's group and reveals that there are other communities out there, all living under the shadow of a group called the Saviors. The Saviors extort supplies from every community they encounter. Pay up or be destroyed. Their leader is a man named Negan. Rick, believing the Saviors to be a manageable threat, makes a deal with the Hilltop. Rick's group will eliminate the Saviors in exchange for food and supplies. They raid a Savior outpost, killing everyone inside in their sleep. It's one of the most morally grey things Rick's group has ever done. These people were sleeping. Some of them might not have been bad. The group kills them anyway, preemptively, to protect their own. Glenn kills a person for the first time during this raid, and the look on his face afterward tells you everything about the cost. The thing Rick doesn't understand, the thing he can't possibly know, is that the outpost they raided wasn't the Saviors. It was a Savior outpost. A fraction. The Saviors are enormous. They have hundreds of members across multiple locations. Rick poked a hornet's nest thinking it was the whole hive, and now the hornets are very, very angry. The season finale is one of the most intense episodes the show ever produced. Maggie needs medical attention for complications with her pregnancy. The group loads up and heads for the hilltop, but every route they take is blocked by the Saviors. Every road has a barricade. The Saviors have been tracking them, herding them, driving them toward a single destination. The tension ratchets up with every failed attempt to get through, and by the time Rick realizes what's happening, it's too late. They are surrounded, dragged out of their vehicle, forced to their knees in a clearing in the woods, lit by headlights. And out of the darkness steps Negan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays Negan with this unnerving blend of charm and cruelty. He's funny, he's theatrical. He leans on his baseball bat, Lucille, which is wrapped in barbed wire, and he gives this long, winding, almost conversational speech about the New World Order. You work for him now. Half of everything you have belongs to him. And to drive the point home, someone needs to die. He plays Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. The bat swings. The screen cuts to black. Season 6 ends on a cliffhanger. We don't see who dies. And this, more than the dumpster incident, more than anything else the show ever did, made people furious. The outcry was massive. Fans, critics, even other showrunners called it manipulative. You cannot build an entire season toward this moment and then refuse to show the payoff. But that's what they did. We had to wait months to find out. Season 7 opens with the answer, and it's worse than most people feared. Negan kills Abraham first. He beats him to death with Lucille while the group watches, helpless and horrified. Abraham, to his credit, sits back up after the first blow and says, "Suck my nuts." He goes out defiant. But Negan isn't done. Daryl, enraged, punches Negan, and Negan responds by turning to Glenn and beating him to death too. Glenn's death is the most difficult scene in the entire series. Stephen Yeun's performance is unbearable. Glenn's eye pops from the force of the blows. He tries to speak. His last words are to Maggie. "Maggie, I'll find you." And then Negan finishes him. I'm going to be honest here. I had to take a break when I first watched this episode. Not because it was scary or gory, though it was both of those things, but because Glenn had been there since the first episode. He saved Rick's life in Atlanta. He fell in love with Maggie on the farm. He was going to be a father. And watching him die like that, beaten to a pulp in front of his pregnant wife, felt like the show was punishing you for caring about these people. A lot of viewers felt the same way, and this is the moment when The Walking Dead lost a significant chunk of its audience and never fully got them back. I understand the creative choice. In the comics, Glenn's death at Negan's hands is one of the most iconic moments in the entire run. It's brutal there too, and it serves an important narrative purpose. It establishes Negan as a villain unlike any the show has faced before. The governor was dangerous, but he could be reasoned with, at least for a while. Negan is a force of nature. He controls through spectacle and fear, and Glenn and Abraham's deaths are the spectacle that breaks Rick's spirit. Season 7 is, for many viewers, the hardest season to watch. Not because of the walkers, but because of the systematic degradation of characters we've loved for years. Negan's system is simple. The saviors take half of everything from every community. If you resist, people die. If you step out of line, people die. Rick is broken in a way we've never seen before. He tells the group to stand down, to comply, to give Negan what he wants. Rick Grimes, the man who fought a tank, who killed his best friend, who declared that the group wasn't a democracy, bows to Negan. Daryl is captured and taken to the Sanctuary, the Savior's headquarters, a large factory compound. He's tortured psychologically, locked in a dark cell, fed dog food sandwiches, forced to listen to the same song on repeat. Negan tries to break him into becoming a savior, but Daryl refuses. He never breaks. He's eventually rescued, but the experience changes him. This is also where we meet King Ezekiel and the kingdom. Ezekiel is a former zookeeper who adopted a theatrical, almost Shakespearean persona to lead his community. He speaks in flowery, formal language, wears a dreadlock crown, and keeps a tiger named Shiva. Yes, a full-grown Bengal tiger, in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. And somehow it works. Kari Payton plays Ezekiel with such warmth and commitment that you accept the tiger, the royal persona, all of it. Carol discovers the truth, that he's just a regular guy putting on a show to give his people hope. And instead of being angry, she's charmed. Their relationship becomes one of the sweetest things in the show. The backstory of Shiva is actually really touching. Before the outbreak, Ezekiel worked at a zoo. Shiva fell into a moat in her enclosure and cut herself badly. Ezekiel jumped in and saved her life, getting bitten in the process but surviving. When the world fell apart, Shiva wouldn't leave his side. She followed him out of the zoo, and from that point on, they were a team. It's absurd on paper, a man and his tiger walking through the apocalypse. But the show presents it with such sincerity, and Kari Payton sells it with such genuine affection that you just accept it. Shiva is family, and in a world where family's everything, that makes perfect sense. The kingdom itself is built in a converted school, and it has this almost fairy tale quality to it. People grow food in the auditorium. They have a choir. They put on plays. Ezekiel holds court in the school theatre, sitting on a makeshift throne with Shiva at his side. And the whole thing is this beautiful, defiant act of imagination. In a world that has stripped away every comfort, every luxury, every piece of beauty, Ezekiel decided to build a kingdom. Not because he's delusional, but because he understands that people need more than survival. They need story. They need spectacle. They need to believe in something, even if it's a guy in a dreadlock crown with a pet tiger. I think about Ezekiel a lot, honestly, There's something really profound about his approach. Everyone else in this world is trying to be realistic, trying to be practical, trying to accept the new reality. Ezekiel refused. He said, no, we're going to have a king and a kingdom, and we're going to act like this matters. And somehow that made it matter. Fiction became function. The performance created the reality. It's a lesson I think has applications well beyond a zombie show. Another community we meet during this era is Oceanside, an all-female settlement hidden along the coast. The Saviours had previously killed every male member of Oceanside above the age of 10, which is the kind of casual atrocity that Negan's operation was built on. The women of Oceanside survived by disappearing, by hiding so thoroughly that even the Saviours forgot about them. Tara discovers the community by accident and promises to keep their secret, which she does for a long time. Oceanside becomes important later when the communities need every fighter they can get, but their trust is hard-won and their pain is deep. We should also talk about Dwight, because his story is one of the more complicated ones in the Saviour arc. Dwight is Negan's lieutenant, the man with the scarred face and the crossbow he stole from Daryl. Before joining the Saviours, Dwight and his wife Sherry tried to escape Negan's control. They were caught. As punishment, Negan took Sherry as his wife, one of several women he essentially coerced into marriage in exchange for privileges, and he burned half of Dwight's face with an iron. Dwight stayed because the alternative was death, but he never stopped hating Negan. Over the course of seasons 7 and 8, Dwight secretly works as a double agent for Rick. He feeds information about Saviour movements, sabotages operations when he can, and takes enormous risks every single day. Austin Emilio plays Dwight with this incredible weariness, like a man who is so tired of being afraid that he's willing to die just to stop feeling it. After the war, Daryl exiles Dwight rather than welcoming him, because Daryl can't forgive the things Dwight did, even in service of survival. Dwight accepts it. He goes looking for Sherry, carrying a note she left him. His story continues in Fear the Walking Dead, where he eventually finds her, which is one of those rare happy endings in this universe. The back half of Season 7 is about Rick rebuilding. He visits the hilltop, where Maggie has taken refuge and is slowly becoming a leader in her own right. He reconnects with the Kingdom. He discovers the Scavengers, a bizarre group led by Jadis who live in a junkyard and speak in this weird clipped syntax. And he starts putting together an alliance to fight back against the Saviours. Sasha, who has been dealing with her grief over Abraham by throwing herself into increasingly dangerous situations, attempts to assassinate Negan on her own. She's captured. Negan tries to recruit her, and in the season finale, she makes a choice. She takes a suicide pill and turns inside a coffin that Negan brings to Alexandria as a gift. The plan is for Walker Sasha to attack Negan when the coffin opens, but it doesn't work out perfectly. Still, Sasha's sacrifice is heroic and heartbreaking. Sonequa Martin Green, who played Sasha, left the show to star in Star Trek Discovery, and her exit was handled with real emotional weight. The Season 7 finale also reveals that the Scavengers, who Rick thought were allies, have betrayed him and sided with Negan. But the Kingdom and the Hilltop arrive just in time to save Alexandria, and the three communities stand together for the first time. War is coming? Season 8 is called All Out War, and that's exactly what it is. The three communities, Alexandria, the Hilltop, and the Kingdom, wage a prolonged campaign against the Saviours across the entire season. It's messy, violent, and controversial. A lot of fans felt the war dragged on too long, that the back-and-forth nature of the conflict, one side gains ground, then the other side gains it back, got repetitive. And I think that criticism has some merits. 16 episodes is a lot of time to fill with what is essentially a military campaign, and the pacing suffers in places. That said, there are some standout moments. The season opens with an attack on the sanctuary itself. Rick and the allied communities bring a massive herd of walkers to the Saviour's front door and trap them inside. It's a bold move, and for a while it seems like it might work. But the Saviours adapt. They always adapt. Morales, the man from Season 1 who left the group to find his family in Birmingham, shows up as a saviour. He's been living with Negan's group. When he encounters Rick again, it's this loaded, sad reunion between two men who took very different paths from the same starting point. Daryl kills Morales almost immediately, which Rick objects to, but Daryl is past the point of caring about moral distinctions. "I don't give a damn about his story," Daryl says, or something close to it. He's not wrong, but it's a bleak statement about what this war has done to everyone. The kingdom takes heavy losses. A savior ambush kills most of their fighters, including Shiva, who dies saving Ezekiel from a group of walkers. Losing the tiger is surprisingly emotional. She's a CGI animal, but Corey Payton's reaction sells it. Ezekiel's spirit is broken. The theatrical king disappears, and what's left is just a scared, grieving man who led his people to slaughter. There's a scene after the ambush where Ezekiel is sitting in the kingdom's theatre, on his throne, alone, and Carol comes to find him. He can't do the voice anymore. He can't do the persona. He looks at Carol and says essentially that it was all fake. The king was fake. And Carol, who knows better than anyone about wearing masks and becoming someone you're not in order to survive, tells him it wasn't fake. The people he inspired were real. The community he built was real. The hope he gave people was real. It doesn't matter if the performance was fiction, because the effect was truth. I love that scene. I think it's one of the most philosophically interesting moments in the whole show. What is identity in a world where everyone has reinvented themselves? If a zookeeper pretends to be a king, and people genuinely follow him, and are genuinely safer because of it, was he ever really pretending? The hilltop also takes significant damage during the war. Simon, Negan's second-in-command, who is even more sadistic than his boss, disobeys Negan's orders and attacks the hilltop with walkers who have been coated in the blood of the dead, essentially using biological warfare. People who are merely scratched in the battle turn and die overnight. The hilltop's doctor is gone. Their medical supplies are depleted. Maggie, who has been leading the hilltop with quiet steel throughout the war, holds things together through sheer force of will, but the cost is enormous. Simon's insubordination eventually catches up with him. Negan has a strict code, twisted as it is. He doesn't want to exterminate communities. He wants to dominate them, to make them work for him, to extract resources. Dead people can't produce anything. Simon's desire for total annihilation threatens the entire system, and Negan deals with him in a fight to the death at the sanctuary. It's a reminder that even among the villains, there are hierarchies and rules, and breaking them has consequences. Eugene, who has been with the Saviors since his capture, makes a critical choice. He's been manufacturing ammunition for Negan, essentially keeping the Savior war machine running. But when the final battle comes, Eugene sabotages the bullets. Every round the Saviors fire backfires, causing their guns to explode. It's the turning point. Eugene's cowardice has been a running theme, and his decision to finally act, even at enormous personal risk, is a satisfying payoff years in the making. And then we need to talk about Carl. Midway through Season 8, Carl is bitten by a walker. He's been trying to help a stranger named Sadiq, a doctor, and in the process he gets bitten on the torso. There's no amputation that can save him. He's gonna die, and he knows it. Carl spends his final hours writing letters to Rick, to Michonne, to Negan. His letter to Negan asks for peace. Carl has seen enough killing. He's seen what the cycle of violence does to everyone, including his own father. He wants it to stop. He asks his dad to find a way to end the war without more death, to build something, to make it mean something. Carl dies in the mid-season premiere. Rick and Michonne are with him. He shoots himself to prevent turning. He is 16 years old. This was, for many fans, the final straw. In the comics, Carl survives. He's one of the most important characters in the entire run. His story continues long after the war with the Saviors. Killing him on the show felt wrong to a lot of people, not just emotionally, but structurally. Carl was supposed to be the future. He was supposed to be the person who inherits the world Rick built. Chandler Riggs, the actor, has said publicly that he was told Carl would be around for at least 3 more years, and the decision to kill the character came as a surprise. It's one of the most debated creative choices in the show's history. That said, Carl's letters, especially the one to Negan, become the emotional compass for the rest of the season. Rick carries those words with him into the final battle. And when he ultimately defeats Negan in one-on-one combat, slicing his throat with a piece of glass from a stained glass window, Rick chooses to let Negan live. He calls for Siddiq to save Negan's life. He locks Negan in a cell in Alexandria. It's Carl's wish. Peace. A world where people don't just kill each other because they can. Rick honours it, even though Maggie, who watched Negan beat Glenn to death, is furious. She wants Negan dead. She has every right to want Negan dead. And the fact that Rick takes that from her creates a rift between them that lasts for years. Negan in prison is one of the show's most interesting long-term choices. He doesn't disappear. He's there, behind bars, a constant reminder of everything that happened. And over the next few seasons, his relationship with the other characters, particularly Judith, who visits him regularly, becomes genuinely complex. Negan is a monster who did monstrous things. He's also a person, and the show has the courage to hold both of those truths at the same time. Season 9 is a turning point. Angela Kang takes over as showrunner, and the difference is noticeable immediately. The pacing improves. The character work gets sharper. The visual style evolves. Seasons 7 and 8 had been divisive, and Season 9 feels like a conscious effort to get the show back on track. And for the most part, it succeeds. The season opens in the aftermath of the war. The communities are trying to rebuild and cooperate. Rick is leading the construction of a bridge that will connect the communities and make trade easier. It's a symbol of unity, of progress, of the future Carl wrote about in his letters. But not everyone is on board. The former saviors struggle to integrate. They're mistrusted, resented, and some of them are actively undermining the cooperation. A man named Jed leads a group of disgruntled saviors who refuse to accept the new order. Maggie is running the hilltop, and she's doing a remarkable job. She's also raising baby Herschel, named after her father. Her first major act as leader is executing Gregory, the former hilltop leader, after he conspires to have her assassinated. Maggie hangs him in front of the community, and it's this chilling, decisive moment that establishes her as a leader who will do whatever it takes to protect her people. It's also the moment where you realise Maggie has changed, in ways that are both impressive and a little frightening. Carol and Ezekiel are together now. They've adopted a teenager named Henry, who is sweet and earnest and reminds them both of what they've lost. Carol seems happy, which is honestly remarkable given everything she's been through. The woman who started the show as a battered wife, hiding in her husband's shadow, is now a warrior, a mother again, and a queen of the kingdom. Her arc is arguably the most complete transformation in the entire series. And then Rick leaves. During an attempt to redirect a herd of walkers, Rick is thrown from his horse and impaled on a piece of rebar from the construction site. He's badly injured, bleeding out and barely conscious. He manages to pull himself free and stumble toward the bridge as the herd approaches. In his delirium, he has visions of people he's lost. Shane, Herschel, Sasha. They guide him toward the bridge. And when the herd reaches the halfway point, Rick shoots a case of dynamite and blows the whole thing up. From the riverbank, Daryl, Michonne, Carol and the others watch the bridge explode. They believe Rick is dead. Michonne screams. Daryl tears up. It's devastating. But Rick isn't dead. He washes up downstream, barely alive, and is found by Jadis, who is now going by her real name, Anne. Anne has been in contact with a mysterious organisation, and she calls in a helicopter. She puts Rick on it and they fly away. Andrew Lincoln's final scene, as a regular cast member, is Rick Grimes being airlifted to an unknown destination by an unknown group. This was Andrew Lincoln's choice. He wanted to leave the show to spend more time with his family in England. His children were growing up and he'd been filming in Georgia for nearly a decade. The original plan was for Rick Grimes movies that would continue his story on the big screen, but those eventually became The Ones Who Live, a limited series that aired years later. But at the time, all we knew was that Rick was gone. The show then jumps forward 6 years. 6 entire years. This is one of the boldest creative decisions the show ever made, and I think it paid off enormously. 6 years of story just skipped. We don't see what happened during that time. We piece it together gradually through conversations and references and the changed landscape of the communities. It's disorienting in the best way, because it mirrors the experience of someone who went away and came back to find everything different. Judith Grimes is now about 10 years old, and she's a tiny ponytailed force of nature, carrying Rick's revolver and Carl's hat. She patrols the area around Alexandria and rescues strangers in the wilderness, just like Rick used to do. Kaylee Fleming, the young actress who plays Judith, is remarkably good. She has this quiet authority that makes you completely buy her as Rick and Michonne's daughter, even though she's biologically Laurie and Shane's child. Rick raised her. That's what matters. Judith is one of the show's secret weapons in the later seasons. She represents continuity. She's the thread that connects the old world to the new one. She never knew Rick, not really. She was too young when he left, but she carries his values, his compassion, his willingness to help strangers. She talks to Negan through the bars of his cell, and those conversations are fascinating because Judith sees Negan as a person, not a monster. She didn't witness what he did. She knows the stories, but she also knows the man who's been sitting in a cell for 6 years, reading, thinking, talking to a child who treats him with kindness. Their dynamic is one of the most unexpected and touching elements of the later seasons. RJ, Rick and Michonne's biological son, is also here. Though he has a smaller role, he's proof that Rick and Michonne built something together, that their love produced life. His existence gives Michonne both a reason to stay and a reason to search. She has a child who needs his mother here, and a partner who might still be alive out there. That tension is part of what makes her departure so wrenching. Michonne has become the leader of Alexandria, but she's hardened during the time jump. She's built walls, both literal and emotional. The communities have largely fallen out of contact with each other. Something bad happened during those 6 years, something involving a group of children that Michonne took in who turned violent, and the resulting trauma made her close Alexandria off from the outside world. New characters arrive. A group of survivors, Magna, Yumiko, Connie, Kelly and Luke, are found by Judith and brought to Alexandria. They bring fresh energy and new perspectives, and they quickly become integrated into the story. Connie, played by Lauren Ridloff, is deaf and communicates through sign language. Her character is handled with real care and respect, and she becomes a fan favourite almost immediately. And then come the Whisperers. The Whisperers are, in my opinion, the creepiest villains the show ever produced. They're a group of survivors who have abandoned civilization entirely. They don't live in communities. They don't build walls. Instead, they wear the faces of the dead. They skin walkers and wear the rotting skin as masks, walking among the herds, becoming part of them. They speak in whispers so the walkers don't notice them. And they've developed an almost animalistic social hierarchy. Their leader is Alpha, played by Samantha Morton, and she is genuinely terrifying. She's shaved her head. She speaks in this flat, emotionless tone. She has completely rejected everything human love, compassion, identity, and replaced it with a philosophy of pure survival. The strong live, the weak die. That's it. She doesn't even use names for her people. She calls herself Alpha. Her massive enforcer is called Beta. Her daughter, who she considers weak, is called Lydia. Beta is played by Ryan Hurst, and he's physically imposing in a way that very few Walking Dead villains have been. He's tall, broad, always masked, and utterly devoted to Alpha's philosophy. We later learn that before the apocalypse, Beta was a famous country music singer, which is such a strange humanizing detail for a character who seems barely human anymore. The Whisperers make their presence known by killing Jesus during what should be a routine mission. It's a shock because Jesus is a skilled fighter, quick and agile, and the idea that walkers could be strategic, could anticipate, could fight back, is terrifying. When they pull back the skin mask and reveal a human face underneath, it changes everything the characters thought they knew about the threats they face. Alpha's daughter Lydia ends up at the hilltop after being captured. She's a teenager who has been raised in abuse and violence, taught that love is weakness and that the only law is strength. Henry, Carol, and Ezekiel's adopted son connects with her. He shows her kindness. He makes her believe there might be a different way to live. Their relationship is sweet and sad and doomed, because this is the Walking Dead and sweet things don't last. Alpha retaliates for Lydia's capture in the most horrifying way possible. During a fair meant to reunite the communities, the Kingdom's Fair, Alpha infiltrates and kidnaps several people. She takes them to a hillside and decapitates them. She places their reanimated heads on pikes, marking the border of her territory. The heads on the pikes: Henry, Tara, Enid, and several others. 10 people total. The camera pans down the line, and each face is a gut punch. Some of these characters have been around for years. Tara since season 4, Enid since season 5. Henry was a child. Carol's reaction to finding Henry's head is some of Melissa McBride's best work. She doesn't scream. She doesn't collapse. She just stops. And then something behind her eyes goes very, very cold. From this moment on, Carol is consumed by the need to destroy Alpha. It drives every decision she makes for the next season and a half. The kingdom falls after the fair. The community can't sustain itself, and the emotional toll of the attack breaks the remaining will to continue. Ezekiel and the kingdom's survivors relocate to the hilltop, and Ezekiel and Carol's relationship fractures under the weight of their grief. Season 9 ends with a voice on the radio. Eugene has been conducting radio experiments, trying to reach other communities, and he makes contact with a woman who identifies herself as Stephanie. She's from somewhere far away, somewhere that sounds organised and functioning. The Commonwealth is about to enter the picture. Season 10 is the war against the Whisperers, and it's one of the show's strongest seasons. Negan, who has been in prison for years at this point, is secretly released by Carol. She makes a deal with him: infiltrate the Whisperers, gain Alpha's trust, and kill her. It's a morally grey plan that could blow up in everyone's faces, but Carol is desperate, and Negan, surprisingly, agrees. Negan's infiltration of the Whisperers is fascinating to watch. He plays the role perfectly, gaining Alpha's trust by being brutal, loyal, and submissive. He even begins a disturbing, intimate relationship with Alpha, which is deeply uncomfortable, but narratively effective. And then, when the moment comes, Negan leads Alpha into the woods and slices her throat. He brings her head back to Carol. "Took you long enough," Carol says. Negan killing Alpha is a pivotal moment in his redemption arc, but it's complicated. He didn't do it purely out of goodness. He did it for acceptance. He wanted to prove to the people of Alexandria that he could be useful, that he could be trusted, that he was more than the man who beat Glenn and Abraham to death. Whether you buy his redemption is a personal question that the show lets you answer for yourself. Beta, maddened by Alpha's death, gathers the full force of the Walker herd, the largest we've ever seen, and leads them against the survivors. The final battle takes place at an abandoned hospital tower where the survivors have taken refuge. The plan involves sneaking through the herd covered in Walker guts, setting up a sound system to lure the Walkers away, and leading them off a cliff into a river. It's tense, chaotic, and emotional. The survivors play Burning Down the House by the talking heads on the speaker system to draw the Walkers, which is both absurd and somehow perfect. Daryl kills Beta by driving 2 knives into his eyes. When Beta's mask comes off, Negan recognizes him from before the apocalypse, but Daryl just says, "Nobody." It's a perfect beat. Lydia, wearing her mother's mask one final time, leads the remaining Walkers off the cliff. Carol tries to sacrifice herself, walking toward the edge, and Lydia pulls her back. "You don't get to do that," Lydia tells her. And Carol, for the first time in a long time, lets someone save her. The Whisperers are finished. Maggie returns, having been away with Georgie's group, and Eugene's group, who set out to meet Stephanie at a train depot, is surrounded by armoured soldiers. The Commonwealth has arrived. I want to pause here and talk about something that happened behind the scenes during Season 10, because it affected the show in ways that are kind of poignant. The COVID-19 pandemic hit right as the show was filming the end of the season. The original Season 10 finale had to be delayed for months, and when the show came back, they produced 6 bonus episodes that aired in early 2021. These bonus episodes are, in my opinion, some of the best episodes in the show's later run, precisely because the pandemic forced the production to scale down. Smaller casts, simpler stories, character-focused episodes that felt more like short films than episodes of a long-running television show. One of these bonus episodes focuses entirely on Daryl, alone in the woods, trying to find his dog named, well, Dog. That's literally the dog's name. Dog. It's very Daryl. The episode is almost silent. Just a man and a dog in the forest, and it's absolutely captivating. Another episode focuses on Negan's backstory, showing us his wife Lucille, the real Lucille, the woman the bat is named after. She had cancer before the outbreak. Negan was a gym teacher. He was a jerk, but he loved her. When the world fell apart, he couldn't protect her. She died. She turned, and Negan had to put her down. Then he named a baseball bat after her, wrapped it in barbed wire, and became the monster we know. It doesn't excuse anything he did, but it explains something. Grief makes people into things they never imagined they could become. That's true in the zombie apocalypse, and it's true in real life. Another character I want to mention before we move on is Princess. Her real name is Juanita Sanchez, and she's played by Paola Lazaro. Princess is loud, colourful, wears bright pink sunglasses, and has been alone for so long that she talks to herself almost constantly. She meets Eugene's group on their way to the Commonwealth, and immediately attaches herself to them with the desperate enthusiasm of someone who hasn't had human contact in over a year. She's funny and eccentric and a little unhinged, and she brings a shot of pure chaotic energy to the show at a time when it really needed it. Her backstory, which comes out gradually, involves an abusive home life before the apocalypse, and her eccentricity is partly a coping mechanism and partly just who she is. I really enjoyed Princess. She felt like a character from a completely different show who wandered into The Walking Dead by accident and decided to stay. And I should mention Aaron's evolution during this era, because it's easy to overlook. Aaron, the man who recruited Rick's group to Alexandria way back in Season 5, goes through one of the most dramatic physical and psychological transformations of any character. He loses his arm during the Whisperer conflict and replaces it with a metal prosthetic that doubles as a weapon, a mace essentially. He goes from being the gentle diplomatic recruiter to a frontline warrior, and the change reflects the broader evolution of the Alexandrians as a whole. The soft people who couldn't fight in Season 5 became the hardened survivors who stood shoulder to shoulder with Rick's group. Alexandria earned its place in this world, and Aaron embodies that transformation. Meanwhile, during this season, Michonne left the show. Danai Gurira departed to pursue film projects, and her exit was handled through a storyline where Michonne travels to a naval base looking for weapons and discovers evidence that Rick is alive. She finds his boots, his phone with a picture of her and Judith carved into it, and realizes he's been taken by the same group whose helicopter she saw years ago. She makes the painful decision to leave Alexandria and go find him, trusting that Judith will be okay. It's a beautiful exit because it gives Michonne agency. She's not killed off. She's choosing to search for the man she loves. And it sets up the eventual reunion that would come in The Ones Who Live. Now we're at Season 11, the final season. 24 episodes split across 3 parts, airing over 2 years from August 2021 to November 2022. It's a lot of television, and it has the nearly impossible task of wrapping up a 12-year story with a massive cast of characters. The first part of Season 11 focuses on 2 major threads. Maggie leads a group to a place called Meridian, a community that was overrun by a militaristic group called the Reapers. The Reapers are former military, organised and brutal, and they've claimed Meridian as their own. Maggie needs the food stores that Meridian has, because Alexandria is starving after the destruction caused by the Whisperers and a series of harsh storms. Daryl ends up embedded with the Reapers because one of their members is Leah, a woman he had a romantic relationship with during the 6-year time jump. Their dynamic is complicated. Daryl cares about Leah, but his loyalty is to his family, to Maggie and the group. When push comes to shove, he chooses them. Leah feels betrayed. The Reapers are eventually defeated, with Maggie killing their leader Pope and Leah escaping. Meanwhile, Eugene, Ezekiel, Yumiko, and a new character named Princess arrive at the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth is unlike anything the show has depicted before. It's a massive network of communities with over 50,000 survivors. They have a functioning government, a military, shops, restaurants, ice cream. People have jobs. Children go to school. There's a class system where your pre-apocalypse career determines your social status. Lawyers and doctors live in nice houses. Manual labourers get the scraps. It's a return to civilization, but it's also a return to all the inequalities and injustices that civilization carried. The Commonwealth is run by Governor Pamela Milton, played by Layla Robbins, and her deputy Lance Hornsby, played by Josh Hamilton. Pamela is a politician, a former governor in the real world who has recreated the social structures she understands. She's not evil in the way the governor or Negan were evil. She's institutional. She protects the system because the system protects her and people like her. And she genuinely believes that maintaining order, even unjust order, is better than chaos. Lance Hornsby is the more overtly dangerous of the two. He's ambitious, manipulative, and willing to use violence to expand the Commonwealth's influence. He sees the smaller communities, Alexandria, the Hilltop, Oceanside, as resources to be controlled rather than allies to be supported. The second part of Season 11 deals with the communities integrating into the Commonwealth and discovering just how rotten it is under the surface. Eugene falls for a woman he thinks is Stephanie, but who turns out to be an imposter planted by Lance to keep tabs on him. The real connection he makes is with Max, a Commonwealth insider who is increasingly disturbed by Pamela's leadership. Magna goes back to waitressing and is bitter about the Commonwealth's hierarchy. Daryl and Rosita become Commonwealth soldiers, but quickly see how the system favours the elite. There's also a significant subplot involving Negan. He's been given a fresh start in the Commonwealth under a new identity, and he's married a woman named Annie who is pregnant. Negan, for the first time in the series, seems genuinely at peace. He's trying to be a good man, but his past catches up with him when Maggie arrives and recognises him. The tension between Negan's desire for redemption and Maggie's inability to forgive him for Glenn's murder is one of the most emotionally complex threads in the final season. Lance Hornsby makes increasingly aggressive moves against the smaller communities. He effectively stages a coup, taking military control of Alexandria, the Hilltop, and Oceanside through a combination of political manoeuvring and armed force. People are displaced. Leaders are removed. The Commonwealth's boot comes down on the people Rick's group fought so hard to protect. The final part of Season 11 brings everything to a head. Pamela Milton, facing a growing rebellion led by Mercer, the Commonwealth's head of military security, cracks down hard. When a Walker breach threatens the Commonwealth, Pamela makes the unconscionable decision to protect the estates, the wealthy district where the elites live, while abandoning the rest of the population to the dead. She literally locks the common people out and lets the Walkers have them. Mercer is worth talking about in more detail because he becomes one of the most important characters in the final season, even though he arrives relatively late. Michael James Shaw plays him with this stoic military bearing that gradually cracks as he sees what the Commonwealth really is. Mercer is a true believer. He joined the Commonwealth's military because he believed in order, in structure, in protecting people. But what he discovers is that the system he serves doesn't protect people equally. It protects the people on top. The wealthy, the connected, the politically useful. Everyone else is expendable. His disillusionment is slow and painful. And when he finally turns against Pamela, it carries the weight of a man who has lost his faith in the only institution he had left. Princess and Mercer also develop a relationship during the final season, which is an unlikely pairing that somehow works beautifully. The loud, chaotic woman in pink sunglasses and the rigid, disciplined military commander. They balance each other out. Princess teaches Mercer that rules aren't the same as morality. Mercer teaches Princess that commitment and discipline can be acts of love. Their relationship is one of the quiet, bright spots in a final season that is otherwise pretty heavy. Something I want to note about the Commonwealth arc, because I think it's worth appreciating, is how politically relevant it turned out to be. The show was written and produced during a period of intense real-world conversations about inequality, about who gets protected and who gets abandoned, about whether the systems we build actually serve everyone or just the people who designed them. The Commonwealth is The Walking Dead's answer to those questions. You can rebuild civilization. You can have ice cream shops and restaurants and schools and all the trappings of the old world. But if you rebuild the same inequalities, the same hierarchies, the same willingness to sacrifice the many for the comfort of the few, then you haven't really rebuilt anything at all. You've just given the old problems a new coat of paint. In the comics, the Commonwealth arc ends very differently. Rick Grimes is there. He's the one who gives the big speech. He's the one who challenges the system. And then, in one of the most shocking moments in comic book history, Rick is killed. Not by a walker, not by a villain, by Sebastian Milton, Pamela's entitled, spoiled son, who shoots Rick in his sleep because Rick threatened the family's power. Rick dies quietly, in his bed, after surviving everything the apocalypse could throw at him. He's killed by a rich kid with a grudge. Carl finds his reanimated father and puts him down. It's devastating and deeply intentional. Kirkman has said he wanted Rick's death to feel pointless, because that's how death usually feels. The show couldn't replicate this because Andrew Lincoln had already left, and Sebastian Milton doesn't exist in the show's version. But the spirit of the comic's ending, the idea that the real danger is always human, carries through. This is the final straw. Mercer turns against Pamela. Daryl gives a speech to the Commonwealth soldiers, asking them to choose between following orders and doing what's right. In the comics, this speech was given by Rick Grimes, and it's one of the defining moments of the final arc. On the show, Daryl delivers it, and Norman Reedus does a beautiful job with it. The soldiers lower their weapons. Pamela is arrested. The Walker breach is dealt with through the combined efforts of all the communities working together, which is thematically perfect. The walls between the groups, literal and figurative, come down. People help each other because that's what people do, or at least what they should do. Rosita is bitten during the Walker breach. She's been bitten while saving children, including her daughter Coco. She doesn't tell anyone at first. She fights through the pain, helps save the Commonwealth, and then reveals the bite to her friends when it's over. Her death scene is quiet and gentle. Eugene, who has loved her for years, is with her. Gabriel, the father of her child, is there. She dies peacefully, surrounded by people who love her. Christian Serratos, who played Rosita for 7 seasons, deserved a death scene with this much care and emotion. And she got one. The estates are destroyed, symbolically dismantling the class system that defined the Commonwealth. A new council is formed. Ezekiel becomes the Commonwealth's governor, which is fitting. He always was a leader, even when he didn't believe it himself. The final episode's last act is a montage set 1 year later. And it's beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes you tear up, not because something sad is happening, but because after 12 years, you're watching people you've cared about finally get to rest. Daryl packs up his motorcycle and leaves. He's heading out on his own, drawn by the open road and the need to see what's out there. Carol watches him go from a window. She's now running the Commonwealth's community operations, essentially doing for the living what she once did against the dead, protecting people, making hard choices, building something better. Their goodbye is understated and perfect. They don't need big speeches. They've never needed words. Daryl and Carol's relationship is one of the most unique in television. It's not romantic, though some fans wished it were. It's something deeper than that. They are each other's person, the one who always comes back, the one who always understands. Their bond was forged in shared pain and mutual rescue, and it transcends easy categorization. When Daryl rides away and Carol watches from that window, you feel the weight of every moment they've shared since the quarry outside Atlanta. Norman Reedus has talked about how emotional the final days of filming were. He'd been playing Daryl Dixon for over a decade. The character wasn't even supposed to be a major player. Daryl doesn't exist in the comics. He was created specifically for the show, and he was originally intended to be a minor, recurring character. But Reedus brought something to the role that nobody anticipated, this raw vulnerability underneath the tough exterior. And the audience responded so powerfully that Daryl became the show's most popular character. By the end, he was effectively the lead. From a character who wasn't in the source material to the man who carries the show's final speech. That's a hell of a journey. Maggie and Negan part ways. Their relationship, which has been the show's most complicated emotional thread, doesn't resolve neatly, and I think that's the right choice. Maggie can't forgive Negan. Maybe she never will, and Negan understands that. He accepts it. They go their separate directions, set up for the Dead City spin-off that follows them to Manhattan. What's remarkable about the Maggie-Negan dynamic is how the show refuses to give you an easy answer. Negan saved the communities by killing Alpha. He's shown genuine remorse. He's built a new life, married Annie, is expecting a child. He's done everything a person can do to change. And Maggie still sees Glenn's face every time she looks at him. Both of those things are true at the same time. Both of those things are valid. The show has the courage to hold that tension without resolving it. And that feels more honest than any neat reconciliation ever could. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's journey with Negan is one of the most interesting actor-character relationships in the show. He came in as the ultimate villain, the man who killed Glenn, and he was genuinely hated by fans. People would shout at him on the street. He received death threats, and then season by season, he humanized Negan without ever excusing him. And the audience's relationship with the character shifted from hatred to something much more complicated. By the finale, some people were rooting for Negan, others still wanted him dead. That's extraordinary character work from both the writers and the actor. Ezekiel is the governor. He's good at it. He's found his purpose again, leading not through theatre, but through genuine compassion and democratic principles. It's a quiet, satisfying ending for a character who lost almost everything. The man who built a kingdom in a school and kept a tiger as his companion now leads the largest surviving community in the known world. And he does it not with speeches and spectacle, but with kindness and fairness and the hard-won wisdom of a man who has seen what happens when leaders prioritize power over people. Gabriel is a community leader, a far cry from the coward who locked his congregation out of his church. His arc from season 5 to the finale is one of the most complete redemption stories the show tells. The man who was too afraid to open a door is now the man who opens every door. He counsels, he leads, he fights when he has to, and forgives when he can. And he's raising Coco, his and Rosita's daughter, with the same devotion that he should have shown his congregation all those years ago. Gabriel found his faith again, not in God necessarily, but in people, in the idea that people are worth saving, even when they're difficult, even when they're broken, even when they lock you out. Eugene has found love and community. He's contributing his intelligence to rebuilding civilization. The man who once lied about knowing the cure to stay alive is now genuinely helping save lives through honest work. Eugene's arc might be the most relatable one in the entire show, if I'm being honest. He's not brave. He's not strong. He's not charismatic. He's a weird, awkward, mullet-wearing guy who talks too much and uses words that are 3 syllables longer than they need to be. And he survives. He survives by being useful, by being smart, by making the right choice when it finally matters, and by learning, slowly and painfully, that being honest is better than being safe. Josh McDermott deserves so much credit for making Eugene one of the show's most human characters. Carol, Daryl, Judith, and the others are safe. Alexandria is thriving. The world isn't fixed, not by a long shot, but it's better. People are working together. Children are growing up. The dead are still out there, always will be. But the living have figured out, finally, how to live alongside that reality. And then, the very last scene, Michonne, somewhere out in the world, riding a horse across an open landscape. She's been searching for Rick. We know from later stories that she finds him, but in this moment, she's still looking, still hoping, still driven by love. And Rick Grimes, alive, alone, but alive. He's sitting somewhere, writing a letter. He puts it in a bottle and throws it into the water. A message in a bottle, a signal to whoever might find it that he's still out there, that he hasn't given up. The final image of The Walking Dead is Rick Grimes walking. Not running, not fighting, just walking, alone but not hopeless, still moving forward. And that, honestly, is the perfect ending. I want to take a few minutes to just sit with what this show was and what it meant before we wrap up for tonight. The Walking Dead ran for 12 years and 177 episodes. It launched on Halloween night 2010 and ended on November 20th, 2022. In between, it became a genuine cultural phenomenon. At its peak, it was the most watched show on cable television. It spawned multiple spin-offs. Fear the Walking Dead, which ran for 8 seasons with its own cast and storylines. The Walking Dead, World Beyond, a 2-season limited series. The Walking Dead, Dead City, following Maggie and Negan in Manhattan. Daryl Dixon, following Norman Reedus' character to France. And The Ones Who Live, the limited series that finally reunited Rick and Michonne. The show launched careers. Norman Reedus became a genuine star. Stephen Yeun went on to be nominated for an Academy Award for Minari. Danai Gurira joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Okoye. John Bernthal became the Punisher. Solnekwa Martin Green captained the USS Discovery on Star Trek. The cast of this show went on to do remarkable things, and I think that speaks to the caliber of talent the show attracted from the very beginning. Critically, the show had its ups and downs. The first season is widely regarded as a masterpiece of horror television. Season 2 was divisive at the time, but has aged well. Seasons 3 through 5 represent the show's golden era for most fans. Season 6 was strong, but controversial. Seasons 7 and 8 tested the patience of even the most dedicated viewers. And Seasons 9 through 11, under Angela Kang's leadership, represented a genuine creative renaissance that reminded people why they fell in love with the show in the first place. But numbers and reviews only tell part of the story. What made The Walking Dead special wasn't the zombies. It was never really about the zombies. The walkers were the weather. They were the constant environmental threat that forced every character to reveal who they truly were. The show was about people, about what happens to human beings when every social structure, every law, every safety net is stripped away. Do you become a monster? Do you become a saint? Or do you become something in between? Something messy and complicated and trying its best? Rick's journey from small-town sheriff's deputy to post-apocalyptic leader and back to just a man trying to find his family is one of the great character arcs in television. Carol's transformation from abused housewife to one of the most capable and dangerous people alive is extraordinary. Glenn and Maggie's love story, born on a farm in Georgia and ending with Glenn's death in a clearing in the woods, is both beautiful and devastating. Daryl's evolution from angry, isolated loner to the emotional heart of the group is something nobody could have predicted in Season 1. And then there are the smaller stories. Herschel's unwavering faith, Morgan's journey through madness and back, Eugene's transformation from coward to contributor, Gabriel's redemption from the man who locked the doors to the man who opens them, Negan's complicated, incomplete attempt to become better, Judith, a baby born into the worst possible world, growing into a child who represents the best of what humanity can be. The show made mistakes. It dragged. It manipulated. It killed characters in ways that felt more like shock value than storytelling. It lost viewers. It frustrated critics. But it also, in its best moments, achieved something that very few television shows ever achieve. It made you feel something real about people who don't exist in a world that could never happen. And that's the highest compliment I can pay any piece of fiction. The Walking Dead is a story about the end of the world, but it's also a story about the beginning of a new one, about people who refuse to give up, who keep walking, who keep trying to build something even when everything around them is falling apart. Rick blows up a bridge and survives. Carol loses everything and keeps fighting. Maggie buries her husband and raises her son. Daryl rides out into the unknown because there's always more road ahead. The dead walk, but so do the living. And in the end, that's what matters. All right, my friend. That's the entire Walking Dead. All 11 seasons. Every community, every villain, every heartbreak, and every quiet moment of hope in between. We've been on quite a journey tonight, and I hope it was a good one. I've got more stories to tell in future videos. Maybe we'll dive into the spin-offs next time, or go deep on specific characters and their arcs, or explore the comics and how they differ from the show. There's always more to talk about. But for now, that's everything. I hope wherever you are, you're comfortable and warm and ready to rest. The walkers can wait. They're not going anywhere, and neither am I. Stay safe. Sweet dreams.